Hey everybody, welcome back to HireWire. Mark here with Sarah.
Hey, everyone.
And we're always talking about the job market and keeping a pulse on what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important.
Whether you're looking to hire people or you are looking for a new role yourself or just, fascinated by what's going on in the economy.
Right.
So today, we are going to be talking about the great Bob Marshall.
Bob Marshall, industry guru.
Industry guru, yeah.
Oh, yes.
And he has, this is his March 2025 kind of like analysis of the BLS data and other data sets.
Yeah. Some other really interesting reports that give a lot of color.
So we're going to unpack that and we're going to talk about all the key challenges and findings.
All right. So Bob's got a lot of different sources, right? He's got middle market companies. He's got ADP. He's got the government.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the middle market stuff first.
Yeah, Citizens Business Leaders Survey.
Okay. So 56% of middle market executives expect to add to their payrolls in 2025.
Wow, that's a big number.
Yeah, that's a big number.
Pretty confident.
It shows a degree of confidence
Yeah.
in their growth prospects.
Yeah, and even more are focusing on recruitment and retention. 84% say that's their priority.
Yeah, that's a huge priority for them. So
Yep.
that really underscores how critical talent is for these businesses.
What are some of the challenges, though, that they see in the coming months?
So the top three challenges all tie.
Yeah.
They're each cited by around a third of the executives. The competition from other companies, lack of qualified or skilled candidates, and rising labor costs.
I mean, we hear this all the time.
All the time, yeah. And it's something that continues to be really a critical issue.
What strategies, though, are they using to kind of overcome these hurdles?
Okay, so first of all, almost 40% are increasing investment in training and development.
Yeah, upskilling people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're also looking at things like automation and artificial intelligence, 38% of them.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. And, this is a way to kind of supplement and enhance efficiency, right? And then also a positive workplace culture. So 36% are focusing on strengthening that, improving employee engagement,
Sure.
recognizing that that's a key to retention.
Of course.
And then, it's not a surprise, 33% say they're offering higher wages and better benefits.
Yeah, money talks.
Always.
Now, Bob quotes Don McCree from Citizens.
Yes, he does.
And he talks about kind of this cautious optimism.
Yeah, cautious optimism.
Sure.
And, despite the economic uncertainties.
Yeah, everybody's always worried about that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, 83% of them say they're in a better financial position than they were a year ago.
Wow.
So that's a pretty good number.
That is a good number, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are they worried about then if most of them are feeling pretty good?
They're worried about inflation.
Yeah.
59%.
That's the big one.
They say that is the biggest risk to their business performance.
Yeah.
This year, they're also worried about interest rates and tariffs as kind of headwinds that they might face.
So the middle market, optimistic, but they're watching inflation carefully.
Right.
Let's move to the ADP National Employment Report. This was for March.
For March, okay.
What did we find out there?
So private sector employment increased by 155,000 jobs in March.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty good. And over 61%, 95,000 of those, came from small and medium-sized establishments.
That's a big number.
And so, Bob's point about this is, for those of you listening who are recruiters, pay attention to those small and medium-sized businesses.
Right. That's where the action is.
Yeah.
What about wage growth?
So the ADP report shows a 4.6% increase in annual pay year over year.
Still pretty decent.
Yeah, not bad.
Anything else notable there?
Yeah, well, manufacturing posted solid job gains for the second consecutive month.
Second month in a row.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
It's interesting.
But on the other hand, construction.
Oh, construction's been having a rough time.
Yeah, as well as trade, transportation, and utilities all saw decreases. Also some regional variations.
Yeah, always.
Job growth concentrated in the Northeast and Midwest,
Interesting.
while the West actually saw a decrease.
The West was negative. Wow. Okay. What about wages? I mean, we talked about the 4.6%, but are there any trends in the wage increases?
Well, yeah, it slowed down a little bit. So the people who stayed in their jobs, the job stayers, they saw 4.6%, but the job changers saw 6.5%, which is down, from previous months.
It's still a premium to change jobs.
It is.
Yeah.
But the premium is lower.
Lower, it's narrowing.
Yeah,
Interesting. So maybe the musical chairs have slowed down a little bit.
a little bit, yeah.
People aren't jumping around quite as much.
Could be.
Okay, so that's ADP. Now let's go to JOLTS, job openings, and labor turnover. This is for February.
For February.
Okay, fair.
Job openings little changed at 7.6 million in February. down from a year ago.
Okay.
Hires and total separations were also pretty stable, little change.
7.6 million, though, that's still a lot of
Yeah, a lot of
jobs.
jobs, yeah, yeah.
A lot of open.
Slight decrease in openings in finance and insurance.
Okay, so that's an area that's maybe slowing down a little bit.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit.
Now, Barf has a really interesting observation about this 7.6 million number.
He does, yeah. He says that actually only represents about 20% of the total market.
20%, so he's saying that the real number is like 38 million.
He thinks so. He thinks so, yeah.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah, it is. So in his mind, you've got those published openings, and then you've got all these hidden openings.
So where are these hidden openings? What's he talking about?
Well, he's talking about, networking, employee referrals, and the work that recruiters do to unearth jobs that aren't necessarily posted.
Right, so it's all the stuff that's happening kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah, behind the scenes. That's a good way to put it.
Not on the job boards.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, so the number might be a lot bigger than we think, or that at least is officially reported.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea.
It is interesting. All right, so that's Jolt Test. Let's talk about the Conference Board Lightcast Help Wanted Online Index. This is for February as well.
Okay.
What was going on there?
Okay, so the HWell index increased in February to 120.8, up from January.
But from January. Okay, so that's positive.
Yeah, it suggests that the number of job vacancies advertised online is rising.
Okay.
But, you have to put that in context.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, it's still down 10.3% from a year ago.
So down year over year,
Yeah.
but up month over month?
Yeah, up month over month.
What is the HWell? What does it actually measure?
It's a measure of the change in online job ads over time, so it kind of gives you an idea of labor demand.
So just the jobs that are advertised publicly?
Yeah, that's right.
Online?
On websites, on job boards,
Okay, so that was that. Now let's go to the big one. The March 2025 BLS Employment Situation Summary.
Okay, so this is the big kahuna.
So the big kahuna, what we learn.
So the unemployment rate edged up to 4.2% in March.
4.2%.
Okay. But the broader U6...
U6, yeah, everybody always forgets about U6.
Right.
Yeah.
What is U6?
So U6, it includes those who are marginally attached to the labor force and those working part-time for economic reasons.
Right, the people that want a full-time job but can only find a part-time job, that kind of thing.
Exactly. So that actually decreased to 7.9%.
So that's positive.
Yeah.
Even though the headline number ticked up a little bit.
Right, right.
Okay, what about job creation? How many jobs did we add?
Total non-farm payroll employment rose by 228,000 in March.
228,000. Okay.
Yeah. And retail trade actually got an upward revision.
Oh, okay, so that's better than we thought.
Yeah. And Bob points out that that was partly due to the return of striking workers,
Oh, right, okay.
but federal government employment actually declined.
Interesting. Government shrinking a little bit.
A little bit, and it's also worth noting that January and February employment numbers got revised downward.
Oh, so not as good as we thought a couple of months ago.
Yeah, not as good as we thought.
Okay, so how do they get to that 4.2% unemployment rate?
Okay, so you take the number of unemployed people,
Uh-huh.
so those who are actively looking for work and available,
Got it.
and you divide that by the total civilian labor force.
Okay.
So in March, there were 7,083,000 unemployed people
Okay.
in a labor force of 170,591,000.
That's a lot of people.
It is. It is a lot of people.
So both those numbers have gone up.
Yes, since February and
Oh.
also since March of the previous year.
So more people working.
Yeah.
More people unemployed, but more people overall.
Yeah, the labor force is still expanding.
Yeah. Now, Bob always likes to talk about the not in the labor force number.
Right, right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the civilian non-institutional population.
Okay, so who is not in that number then?
So we're not talking about people in prisons
Got it.
or, in other institutions.
Okay.
Right. So this number has continued to grow.
Okay.
Right. And Bob's always asking this question. There's like 102 million people
Not working.
who are not in the labor force.
Yeah.
And he always asks, how are these people surviving?
How are they living?
How are they living? Yeah. They're not employed and they're not looking for work.
So they're not counted in the unemployment rate.
They're not counting.
Right. They're just out there.
Right. And it's a much higher number than a year ago.
So that's kind of an interesting side story there.
It is. It is.
What about the participation rate?
So that's remained unchanged at 62.5%,
Okay.
which, historically, that's pretty low.
Yeah, not a lot of people working.
Not a lot of people working. No, it's kind of like comparable to 2015 and even the late 70s.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Interesting. Okay, so let's drill down a little bit. Bob talks about management, professional, and related occupations.
Okay, so yeah, this is the white collar stuff.
So the white-collar folks, what was the unemployment rate there?
Really low, 2.3%
2.3% in March.
in March. Yeah, down slightly from
That's for
February.
February. Okay. And then people with college degrees.
Also really low, 2.6% in March, up slightly from February.
So basically, if you're a recruiter, you're looking for a manager or a professional with a college degree.
It's tough out there.
It's tough. There's nobody to hire.
Right. And Bob kind of connects this back to Milton Friedman.
Oh, yeah. Everyone loves Milton Friedman.
Yeah, the natural rate of unemployment, or NARU.
Nairu.
Yeah, and this theory says, there will always be some unemployment,
Yeah.
even in a good economy.
Right. People in between jobs.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's usually estimated to be like 4 to 6%,
Okay. So we're way below that.
way below that. So, Bob's argument is that for professionals and college graduates, we are significantly below that natural rate.
Which means if you're a recruiter, you're not going to find somebody who's unemployed. You're going to have to go poach somebody from another company.
Exactly. You got to go after the employed, the
Yeah.
satisfied.
Yeah.
And especially in these expanding tech areas, it's really, really difficult.
Okay. So that's kind of an interesting challenge or finding, I guess.
It is, yeah, it's a challenge if you're a recruiter, but it's good news if you're employed.
Good news for the workers.
Right.
Okay, now Bob talks about GDP a little bit. What was GDP doing?
So real GDP increased at an annual rate of 2.4% in the fourth quarter of 2024.
Okay.
And for the whole year of 2024, 2.8% growth.
Pretty good.
Yeah, not bad.
What was driving it? What was making GDP go up?
So increased consumer spending, government spending.
Government spending always goes up.
Yeah, always. But this was offset by a decrease in investment.
Okay.
So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so consumers and the government were spending, but businesses were not investing as much.
Yeah, that's right.
How does GDP tie into this whole employment picture, though?
Okay, so basically a growing economy,
Yeah.
which is what GDP shows us, means there's more demand for goods and services.
Yeah.
And then businesses need to hire more people to meet that demand.
Right. So more GDP growth usually means lower unemployment.
Usually. Yeah, there's usually a correlation there.
Okay, and then Bob gets into some kind of like unemployment 101.
Yeah, yeah. He gives us a little bit of background.
Background, yeah.
So first of all, he says, you can't have zero unemployment.
Right.
It's not realistic. It's not even necessarily desirable.
Right. There's always going to be some churn.
Yeah, exactly. And it can actually be disruptive if it's too low.
Oh, how so?
Well, you can get wage inflation.
Oh, right. If everybody has a job, then companies are just bidding up wages to try to steal people from each other.
Exactly.
Exactly. So there's kind of a sweet spot there somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Okay. What are the different kinds of unemployment that Bob talks about?
So he talks about cyclical unemployment, which is tied to the business cycle.
Right. Recessions and that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And then frictional, this is just the natural churn, people in between jobs.
Okay.
Structural, this is where skills and jobs don't match up.
Yeah.
Seasonal, like the ski instructors.
Mm-hmm.
And surplus unemployment,
Right.
which is kind of when you have more workers than jobs.
So that's like a long-term structural problem almost.
Right, right.
Okay, so those are all the different kinds of unemployment.
Yeah, he's giving us a little bit of a lesson here.
Yeah, a little bit of a lesson. Anything else in there that's notable?
Yeah, he talks about unemployment benefits
Oh, right.
and how long they last and how generous they are and how that can affect, how quickly people look for a new
Right.
job.
If you're getting a lot of money, you're probably not in a huge rush.
Right, exactly. And he also talks about, how unemployment changes often lag behind GDP changes,
Yeah.
because businesses are kind of slow to react sometimes.
Right, it takes them a while to figure out what's going on and adjust their hiring plans.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now Bob goes back to the professional and college-educated workers, right?
He does.
Okay.
He does. Yeah, he gives us a little historical perspective.
Okay.
And he shows us the unemployment rates over the past 25 years.
5 years, okay.
Yeah. And the takeaway is, those rates have been really low for a while now.
So this is not a new thing.
Not a new thing.
Okay.
It's consistent with his earlier point about how tight that labor market is for those folks.
So if you're recruiting in those areas, you're trying to poach people who are already employed.
That's it. And especially in those growing tech areas where there's so much demand.
Okay, so what's the bottom line here? What's Bob's, big takeaway?
Okay, so, we've got middle market companies who are planning to hire, but they're facing competition and rising costs.
Yeah.
The overall job market is growing. Smaller businesses are leading the way.
Mm-hmm.
General unemployment is up a bit, but it's still really low for professionals and college grads.
Yeah.
It's a war for talent.
A war for talent, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for certain segments.
Exactly. Exactly.
So if you're a company, you're investing in your people, you're trying to upskill them.
Right. And you're looking at technology solutions.
Yeah.
And you're keeping a really close eye on inflation.
Sure. Okay. And if you're a recruiter, you're busy.
You're busy, especially for professional and skilled roles.
Right.
You're sourcing people who are already employed. They're probably already successful, but maybe looking for something better.
Yeah.
And, it kind of leads to the question for you listeners.
Yeah.
How does all this affect your recruiting strategy
Right.
or your career
If
decisions
you're a job seeker.
if you're a job seeker?
Yeah.
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 So you got to kind of look beyond those headline unemployment numbers
Right.
and really understand the trends.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. That was Bob Marshall's analysis for March 2025. Always insightful.
Always, he's the best.
Thanks for joining us today on HireWire. I'm Mark.
And I'm Sarah.
We'll see you next time.